Hey there, Munaki. It's Friday. Figure you haven't seen my face in a while. I just want to say happy Friday, happy Spirit Day, House Reviewer, represent, and to lead us all in, let's assemble House Reviewer. All the dreamers have assembled. Let's get in today's breakdown, Mr. Keelan. Hey, seventh graders. We're going to be wrapping up the discussion on the Declaration of Independence today. We're going to be analyzing the purpose and the legacy of the Declaration of Independence, not just to the people of America, but to the people of the world. It is a profound document. It really belongs not just to the people of the American Revolution or to us as Americans. It is a document as part of the human legacy. So let's explore it a little bit. So some of the purposes of the Declaration of Independence, just to kind of wrap up, were one, they had to unify the country. Remember that we had 13 separate states that each, before this time, saw themselves as separate entities from one another, governed separately from one another, and often were mistrustful of one another. But they know in order to beat the biggest, baddest army in the planet, the strongest navy in the planet that's never lost a war, they're going to have to work together to have any chance. In the words of Benjamin Franklin, now we all must hang together, or most assuredly, we will hang separately. If we don't work together, we're all going to get hanged. Next is to set up that idea that the United States is a legitimate nation. And we got into this in the formal declaration section of the last lesson, but that, hey, world, we are now one of you. Now we will hope to establish alliances and trade relations with foreign countries, in particular those of you who didn't like us because we used to hang out in England and we weren't allowed to see you or talk to you. Well, now, hey, we broke up with England. We're single and ready to mingle, and we're one of you. We're a country in the world. So we're ready to trade and form alliances. And this is also trying to convince the U.S., the people in the U.S., that it is no longer part of Great Britain, and to have that air of confidence that they have a chance of winning, and to convince the other countries in the world that, hey, we're no longer with Britain and we have a chance of winning. You want to work with us. And lastly, it works to connect the ideas of the United States war with Great Britain to the ideals of the Enlightenment. That time period that had been going on of trying to establish a better world using the power of reason. And the Declaration equates mankind's struggle for the recognition of and the protection of their natural human rights, and equates their struggle as Americans to this human struggle. So, looking at the legacy of the Declaration of Independence, you can see lots of different documents on the right side of your page, and those were all inspired by the Declaration of Independence. Other nations around the world, more than 100 times nations have broken free from one regime to establish their own independent country. So many of them have used Jefferson's words and the ideas expressed in the Declaration of Independence to justify their actions. And that's really in a large way because the Declaration speaks to anybody who is fighting for equality, anybody who believes in natural rights, anybody who believes that they have a right to have a voice in the government. And that universal truth of the Declaration is a real important aspect of why it's had such a powerful legacy. The French Revolution, within a few years of our own revolution, has the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizens. It's modeled after our own Declaration of Independence. The rule of colonial powers in the Americas, starting with the Venezuelan Declaration of Independence, If you look in South America, Mesoamerica, the Caribbean, and the Americas, as other countries broke free from colonial rule, just as we did, they modeled their Declaration of Independence after us. Even nations that have governments that aren't necessarily like ours. The Vietnamese Declaration of Independence, written by Ho Chi Minh, was part of a communist revolution starting in 1945. And their Declaration of Independence, a lot of it is word for word copied from Jefferson. After World War II, the establishment of the United Nations, a big part of the charter of the United Nations is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Again, much of it is modeled after our Declaration of Independence. But beyond just nations, any people who were fighting for civil rights, for equality, for democratic rights, for recognition and protection of those rights, also hearkened to the words of the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Sentiments, which was given at the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848, which was really the catalyst to the women's suffrage movement and the women's rights movement in the United States, delivered its own declaration to the world of why they were fighting for human rights. If you look at the words of it, it harkens to the spirit of the Declaration. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal. Further on in it goes, the history of mankind is a history of repeated injuries and usurpation on the part of man toward woman, having a direct establishment and absolute tyranny over her. They're hearkening the same ideals into their fight. Another famous example of somebody making a connection to the Declaration of Independence, to their own fight and struggle, is Martin Luther King, the civil rights pioneer and leader. And his most famous speech, the I Have a Dream speech, harkens to the ideals of the Declaration of Independence. He said in the speech, "I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal." So these ideals are so crucially important, especially since we have a nation that didn't always live up to those ideals. The ideas of the Declaration of Independence have not always, and still in many ways don't always, match the reality of what is going on in America. When the Declaration of Independence was written in 1776, many Americans were left out of those same rights that were promised in it. Laws in the U.S. unequally applied on the basis of class, race, religion, ethnicity, sexuality, political affiliation. You could go down the list throughout our history, unfortunately, not just in 1776, throughout many different periods of our history, of people who were left out of the political process because of their perceived difference. And even though that declaration, or the nation created with that declaration, had left them out, and left some of them out for many years, the idea that they should have a right, that there's a universal truth, that everybody has equal rights, that everybody was born with certain unalienable rights, and the government is meant to protect those, was the catalyst, the fuel behind so many of those struggles. Behind women, 50% of the population who had been treated as second-class citizens from the founding of our country. You could argue through the 20th Amendment, the 20th Amendment all the way through, even still today. Native Americans who had been subject to many oppressions and had been written about pretty poorly in the Declaration of Independence, fighting for the same ideals within it. Not to mention slavery, which stands against every idea of the Declaration of Independence. 41 out of 56 people who signed the Declaration of Independence at one point in their life owned slaves. And that's a document that says that all people are created equal and no one has the right to oppress another person. And if that happens, that person should be removed from power. And yet, here they were owning human beings. But again, time and time again, especially in U.S. history. The fact that we were founded on this document was used as a justification for the rights for equal rights from all these people and so much more that I didn't even touch on. So, my question for you, I'd like you to describe at least one group of people after the American Revolution who were inspired by the ideals of the Declaration of Independence. And I'd like you to do a debate question. Is the legacy of the Declaration more one of human liberation or one of human hypocrisy? Defend your answer. I can't wait to read them, and I encourage you to respond to each other's postings. Have a marvelous weekend. I'll see you all on Monday. Take care.